Okay, good morning, everybody. So our first discussion for today is on Afrofuturism and how animation is envisioning future realities. And my name is Simone McIntyre, your moderator for this morning. I'm an actor, producer, writer from London. And with me, I have Ebele Okoye, who is Africa's pioneering female animator, global speaker, juror, with a deep commitment to ethical EI and socially conscious media. She has a ton of accolades, so we have a short panel, so I won't go over them.
No, don't go there.
But also, we have Tshepo Moche, who's a writer, director, mother, and activist, and a partner at Play Nice Pictures of South Africa. And she's also stepped into animation as a writer on the Netflix series Super Team 4. And we also have Mahmoud Hemeda of Egypt, who is co-founder of Samaka Studio and Animatic's Animation Festival. And he's also heading the new wave of culturally rooted animation from the MENA region. So when we think of Afrofuturism in recent times, we think of the big splash that the Black Panther film made. But actually, Afrofuturism has its roots go much further back than that. So I'd like to come to Ebele to just give us a bit of a background on how it evolved.
Yeah, hi everyone, and nice to have you all here. Tshepo and Mahmoud, you might not hear me properly, but I'll try to move on. So, the thing is that the term Afrofuturism, like Simone said, people think it started with Black Panther, but this goes back to 1920. What's the name of that? A writer who wrote, it's a term that started from the activism of trying to break out of colonial rule. So W.B. Du Bois, I think, did I pronounce it properly? Du Bois, yeah. Du Bois, yeah. He wrote that piece that poetry piece in short story in 1920. That is the beginning of the entire thing. And then we go forward to 1974 with this guy who made the film. Oh my God, sorry, we've been waiting so long, my brain has clogged. So in 1974, this guy made this film that is focused on reimagining these African identities and cultures and all that. But then what really brought out Afrofuturism was in 1993. What's the name of a guy who made the film Black to the Future? Aye. Does anybody know Black to the Future? Yeah, so that is the first film that actually put Afrofuturism as a visual, like filmmaking means. And then of course came 2018, Black Panther, but what we must know, Black Panther is not Afrofuturism. It is based on Afrofuturism because it is produced outside of Africa. Because what I say to people, with some don't like, if you're talking Afrofuturism, it must be rooted in Africa. And then when it comes to animation, it must be made by Africans or Africans in the diaspora or anybody who has that identity. It's an identity thing. And actually, there is a lot we can talk about the introduction now, but we don't have much time. So let's move on.
Thank you. So coming to you, Tshepo, I wonder if you could give us your take on why it's having a renaissance and why it's popular in animation at the moment.
Sorry, I might need you to just repeat that for me, please.
I'd like you to give us your take on why Afrofuturism lends itself well to animation and why it's having a renaissance and is so popular.
I think it's having the renaissance and refreshing now because we're in a time where, one, I think the market and audiences are a lot more open and encouraging and wanting of diverse content. Across the globe. So I think Africa as a continent is a source of a lot of historical story is being spotlighted a lot more. And I think in terms of Afrofuturism, looking at a lot of our stories, which are steeped, in historical facts and some fantasy and folklore, and deep levels of spirituality as well. I think animation lends itself beautifully to the kind of stories we're trying to express, from social impact as well, I think politically as well, in a time where we're really shifting as a people. It's a wonderful medium and vessel, I think, to tell story, to stretch story. Also a wonderful medium for audiences to imagine and believe that something can be possible in ways that I don't think necessarily live action lends itself to.
That's
so I think that's why it's really great. Animation as a medium in general, I think, is really great towards that, but more specifically directed at Afrofuturism as a term, really powerful.
Mahmoud, did you have anything to add to that regarding the popularity?
Yes. Sorry, could you repeat?
I said, did you have anything to add to that regarding popularity of Afrofuturism?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Tshepo said and Ebele as well. My take about that, when I first heard about the word Afrofuturism, I'll be real, it didn't sit easily with me, not because I don't get what it's trying to do, but because it felt like it frames Africa and as we need to catch up the future, and as if that we are not living the future in our own way and telling our own stories as well. So, and especially from as an Egyptian, and we are considered as Arab, and at the same time we are African. So we got between identity boxes, and it's. I think it's about stretching the term and telling the stories with our own method, and speaking to our audience, and try also to speak to wider audience and stretch, as Tshepo mentioned, stretching our storytelling to the global audience as well. That's how I felt toward the Afrofuturism. And toward the animation, yeah, it's completely a great medium to tell stories. I'm coming from Egypt. The Egyptian civilizations used to tell stories through walls and drawings, and now it's our own way to tell stories through animation as well. So yeah,
nice.
It's a great way to tell stories.
Thank you. You touched on it briefly, Mahmoud, but Tshepo, could you give us your take on the as you're South African, what the South African identity is in animation?
I don't want to specifically tag and bag what the South African identity is. I think in any country or culture or nation, you're exploring your own identity as creatives. I think there's always a subjective kind of expression to that. So I wouldn't be able to coin specifically what is South African identity. But I think to Mahmoud's point as well around Afrofuturism and the idea that, we don't want it to necessarily, I think one has to be wary of it as well in a certain way, that we don't want it to seem as if Africa is one nation, which is something I think we've worked very hard to make sure we're not perceived as. And Afrofuturism can sometimes tag and bag us as one people, whereas we are a collection of diverse folk. So when it comes to our identity, I think, again, it's subjective to the creative. I mean, I'm a cross-culture kid. I was born in Zambia. I grew up in Canada. I went to school in Swaziland. I'm South African. So I bring all of that to my art and to my work. But there is a dominant feature around being South African. That's the culture I breathe my work through. But it's always inclusive of my experience, which I think is what's important creatively, is we are just expressing our lived experiences as well as drawing from others, and forming it into a story that's accessible to all.
If I may add to that, I am not South African, but from my point of view as an observer, I think that the post-apartheid experiences also play a role in pushing Afrofuturism in the South African region. Because when you think about it, what started it? We were trying to break out from colonialism, right? And it's not every African country that has experienced that, but South Africa has experienced real life, the real bad impact of colonialism. So I feel that this is part of more of a reason, more of the trigger why you see more of Afrofuturism coming from South Africa, because they are aligned to that basic root of Afrofuturism. Because a Nigerian, of course, a Nigerian might make an Afrofuturistic work just for aesthetics, Maybe, I would say, some might make it for aesthetics. But if a South African is making an Afrofuturistic work, it is from a passion of experience. That's my take on that. I might be wrong, but this is the way I see it from my position in the industry.
Yeah. Thank you. Mahmoud, do you have anything to add on that, the North African identity and animation?
Yeah, not too much, but yeah, we are trying to not to compete and to complete each other with like different perspectives. Yeah. What we are trying to do as an animation studio, that we are trying to focus on our stories and tell the stories from our perspective, because I used to watch the content of animation as a kid from like a westernized perspective or point of view, like movies, The Prince of Egypt or Aladdin or Sinbad. Those are great movies, but I wish that I can tell the story from my perspective and as an animation studio, and that's what we are trying to focus right now at the moment, to build stories that can work globally. One of our projects that we are working at the moment to develop is REM. It's a rapid eye movement, short for a rapid eye movement, about nightmares captivating the world and wanting there are no good dreams. And so the theme itself is really, really understandable, but we are getting the story from a local protagonist and from a local set, and we are trying to export that into like a global test and perspective. So by telling our stories, focusing on what inspires us, trying to also make something that is relatable to like wider audience, that's how we would show our identity in our own way in animation. Yeah.
Can I add something, Simone,
sure.
if you don't mind?
Yes, sure.
You know, I'm just reminded of something that was interesting working on the Kizazimoto anthology, which, I mean, had 10 films from 10 different African directors, you know, different cultures, different stories, different themes. But what was really interesting for us also as directors is what we discovered after making all the films is all of us had some aspect of spirituality, very deep spirituality in all our films, in different pockets and corners. But that's something, at least I know the Kizazimoto family kind of took away in terms of, you know, what is a broader stroke identity, is that we were all exploring spirituality, or there was some essence of it in there, which told us that rootedly, that's something that connects us all in some form or way, even if it's different. So that was something that did come up in terms of identity.
Well, that is a point. Spirituality is in Africa, the whole of Africa, even though we're so diverse, that is one thing we all share, because you find European societies that some are not. You wouldn't say that the French are as spiritual as the Germans or so, but in Africa, you would find that basic element of the spirituality. And remember, if you go back now to the African Americans, what kept them when they got there as slaves? Spirituality. Yeah. So now we go back and we're now coming back to the loop. The root of Afrofuturism is to decolonize. And the Black Americans with their spirituality, that was what made them, what was their support or comfort in those times of
and
trouble.
Anchor.
Yeah, anchor.
Yeah.
So you see, it's going back to the same thing. Whichever angle you look at it from, it goes back to that one same root, looking for freedom. It's just that, like Mahmoud said, is sometimes Afrofuturism is presented as something like Africans are trying to catch up with technology. No, that's not what it is. You know, it's it's a spiritual thing. But depending on the way you present it, it's presented the way it's presented because, like Tshepo said, animation doesn't face the limitations that live action faces. That's why you find it more present in animation, because that's where you have a freedom to express yourself as however you want to express yourself. That's just what I wanted to add.
So it has a more global appeal.
Yeah. And I remember the name of that author from 1920, Sun Ra.
Yes.
Sun Ra, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, it's correct.
Yeah, did my research.
Okay, that was some right.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what you said, what you're saying about global appeal. I myself recently was told about a children's project to see it as animation rather than live action because the lead was an old black lady. And so it would be more appealing, the aesthetic is much more appealing and not so, I wouldn't say the word threatening, but it's just something about the animation version of that in general would be more welcoming to audiences that don't look like that, so to speak. What I want to ask you now is, what would you like to see happen to further capitalise on what's happening at the moment with the Renaissance and build the global audience for African animation? For any of you.
I don't think they heard that.
Tshepo and Mahmoud, did you hear me just now?
Please, could you repeat? I'm not sure I heard all of it.
What would you like to see happen to further build and capitalise on the interest in animation, in African animation, to grow the global audience? Funding. Money.
I think we are asking about the global audience, how to reach a wider audience.
Yes, that's correct.
No, what
that's
we'd like to see happen to help grow African animation and reach a global audience. Well, I can go in the meantime, if it helps.
Thank you, yes.
I'm pretty fast with that. I mean, I work a lot in development. As much as I'm a writer and director, development is really where I like to sit because I think that as we're growing as an industry on the continent, I think being able to support and work with other people to help get their work across from a global understanding and standard is really important. So for me, what I'd really like to see is more collaboration. I think, and we throw collaboration out pretty loosely, like let's collaborate, let's like be diverse, and but I don't think people really understand what means to collaborate. So I'd love to see more cross-border collaboration, so we start to kind of melt those borders away. And I think from a policy aspect as well, I think we have a lot of countries, South Africa's got a lot of policy work with other European Western countries, co-production deals, etc. I think it would be very strong if we had a lot more of that going on our continent as well. I think that would help from a funding aspect, would also really help our products, our creatives, be highlighted more in more global market as well. I'm speaking as a South African because I think we get quite a lot of support locally that I don't necessarily see in other African countries. So having more collaborative relationships from a policy aspect, I think would really work, but also creatively as well. I think us being able to meet in these global stages a lot more, and connecting those dots as well. I think we end up in quite these little silos in these groups when we get to markets and, big festivals like AfroCannes and Annecy, etc. and so forth. So being able to link us and being more aware of each other as creatives, that we are aware. You'd be surprised how many of us don't know are in the room and in the space attending these things together. Yeah. But I think those are ways that would start to push our content and our creative work forward a lot more collaboration, really.
Thank you. Did you want to speak to that, Mahmoud?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Tshepo, and it reminded me with a collaboration that we did recently with Apple Store in Abu Dhabi, and it was one of its own kind for an animation studio to do something like in collaboration with Apple, and it was about an animation educational content and educational course. It was a learning experience for me that we have received over 100 applicants, and we ended up doing the workshop with 63 person. And it was very, very inspiring that I was teaching a kid and a parent at the same time. So it fostered the way that people love animation, want to explore it more, and it fostered the methods of collaborating with tech entities or because that's something that previously didn't come up to my mind before, that I can collaborate with Apple, for example, in their store to do something. That's something it was away or far from my thinking. But yeah, collaboration is one of the most important things that would help us grow and reach global audiences and work with others as well.
Thank you.
And in terms of content, we stopped guessing what is needed or what's supposed to be created in terms of content with platforms or with different entities. We are trying to just focus on the stories and build something that's authentic, comes from like Egyptian folklore, street noises, glaciers, just like a new perspective and putting that into life. So I think honestly, it's the connection doesn't come from like the name of the entity or for the collaboration. It comes by letting people see the process and the messy parts of it and why we are doing this and touching them with our like emotions through the stories, etc.
Thank you. Yeah. We're going to have to wrap up. Ebele, did you want to add something really quickly?
Yeah, I wanted to say something concerning what needs to be done for such stories to reach the global audience. Everything that Tshepo and Mahmoud have said, collaborations and all that. Another thing I say from my point of view, because I run a lot of mentorship programs, sometimes we ask for collaboration. It would be nice to collaborate, but we forget also that we are not the only ones who decide on how these collaborations are going to go. For instance, I might say, oh, I love to collaborate with you. You love to collaborate with me, but you need to pay your rent. You need to get your life going. So where is the funding coming from? That's where the funding, and then we struggle to get funding. Like Tshepo said, funding is necessary. But one thing that is extremely important is that it's necessary for policymakers to talk to the governments of the different countries to start to sign co-production treaties with each other. I know that Nigeria and South Africa have a co-production treaty since 2015. I do not know if anything has come out of it yet. So the thing is that sometimes we go to places, we go to film festivals or events, and then people are euphoric. These policymakers or people from the government or representatives, they come there and they're like, oh yeah, we're going to do it together, we're going to work together now. And then everybody goes home. That's where it dies. So we need something, even the psychologist needs a psychologist, right? So it will be if it's possible that even within, when we're talking collaborations, that within the animation space, that there would be policymakers who can collaborate with us to come up with incentives that is going to help to ensure that animation is funded in the continent. That is distribution of funding so that there are millions of stories to tell. So many stories. Wherever you look in the continent, there are stories. So these are the things we need. Us collaborating alone would also not cut it. We need people who can connect to those who
connect the dots.
We make laws. Like you have copyright laws. We should have something like that.
Thank you. Yeah. So we've come to the end of our discussion, but if you could just, Tshepo, could you tell us where to find out more about you and your work before we go?
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, you can find out more of our work. I mean, we have a website, www.playnicepictures.com. I also work as a dev exec at Triggerfish Animation Studios. So that's another place where one is able to reach out to me. And live and in person, if you see me, please feel free to just approach me. A lot of people don't. I'm one of those who can. So that's how you can find me. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mahmoud?
Yes, we can find all of our work through like social media on Instagram, Samaka, just type Samaka Studio or our website as well. And we are an animation studio and an animation school, and we have Egypt's biggest animation festival. So we are trying to build the whole ecosystem of animation. Yeah, and we had Tshepo before one of the speakers in our animation festival. So it was a great time there.
So you're all family.
Check out our work and yeah, definitely let's stay connected, and I hope that we can work with as many people as possible.
Thank you.
From different continents and different countries as well.
Thanks, Mahmoud. And Ebele?
Yeah, mine is complicated as usual. We have my stuff at jollysquid.com. That's my major studio in Nigeria because I have 3 studios: Spunky Tunes, Jolly Squid, and recently Noah Vista Studios. Because why? Sorry, I need to say this. because we're talking about generative AI, right? We know that AI is here and it's infiltrating the animation space. We cannot live without it anymore. So it should be a tool for animators. That's why we started Noa Vista Studios, and Noa Vista is focusing just basically on ethical AI education and production. So we have this education named Noa Ethica. So go to noavista.com or jollysquid.com. I'm sorry, it's a lot. I have business cards. I can drop some.
Thank you so much.
I mean, that's the advantage I have over them. I have stickers, I have business cards, so I'll drop them there. Don't ask me, just pick them up on the table. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. And we have completed our first panel discussion of AfroCannes 2025. Thank you.
Hey, Tshepo and Mahmoud.